The alien rulers arrived without any warning. 1 minute Earth was peaceful, and in the next, the skies split open, revealing enormous ships hovering over the largest cities. Governments scrambled to communicate, military forces were mobilized, but it was too late. The invasion wasn't a war, it was an annihilation. The overlords didn't need full-scale assaults, nor were their soldiers ever seen. Instead, they unleashed their most terrifying weapon, the shadow assassins. Nobody knew where they came from or how they moved, but wherever they appeared, death followed. World leaders were assassinated during the night, defense systems collapsed overnight, and even the most fortified bunkers were breached with ease. No alarms, no traces, just silence. The world was in shock. Within a week, Earth's defenses had crumbled. Nations that once boasted the most advanced technology and military might were reduced to ruins, unable to even understand the threat they were facing. The shadow assassins were like ghosts, slipping through every barrier, killing with precision, leaving no survivors. Entire cities fell under their silent reign of terror. No warning, no mercy. As governments collapsed and humanity was brought to its knees, the overlords revealed themselves. They broadcasted a message to the entire planet: cold, calculated, and final. Earth now belonged to them, and resistance was futile. Panic spread across the globe like wildfire. People hid in terror, unsure when or where the next attack would strike. The world's leaders, the last fragments of organized resistance, convened in what little secrecy they had left. They knew they couldn't outfight the aliens. Their weapons were ineffective, their technology outclassed. Every attempt to strike back ended in failure, as the shadow assassins automatically dismantled their plans. Humanity's end seemed inevitable. But then, quiet rumors began to spread, whispers of something, or someone, fighting back. Not in the open, not with guns or bombs, but from the shadows, just like the assassins. They called it the Creeper. No one knew whether it was a person, a team, or something else entirely, but stories began to emerge from resistance groups. The shadow assassins were being hunted. It started with isolated cases. A squad of shadow assassins sent to eliminate a resistance cell never returned. Days later, their mutilated bodies were discovered, their technology destroyed. Then, a high-ranking alien commander was found dead aboard his ship, his guards killed without a shot fired. The overlords were enraged. They're perfect. Invincible assassins were being picked off, one by one. The Creeper didn't act like a traditional soldier. There were no grand battles or heroic charges. Instead, it struck from the dark, using tactics even the shadow assassins couldn't predict. Wherever the aliens went, the Creeper was already there, lurking, waiting. It seemed to know their every move, their every plan, as if humanity's darkest nightmares had come to life, but for once, those nightmares fought for them. The overlords didn't understand. How could the primitive humans, on the brink of extinction, create something that could challenge their most feared warriors? They had underestimated human ingenuity and the lengths humanity would go when pushed to the edge. The Creeper wasn't a conventional hero. It didn't wear a uniform or lead an army. In fact, no one had ever seen it. It moved in whispers and rumors, leaving only destruction in its wake. But its message was clear: humanity wasn't finished yet. Word of the Creeper spread through the remaining pockets of resistance like wildfire. For the first time since the invasion began, hope flickered. Small groups started to band together, encouraged by reports that the alien assassins could be defeated. They began adopting the Creeper's tactics, using guerrilla warfare, traps, and ambushes to take down isolated alien forces. What little technology they had left was repurposed into tools of sabotage and disruption. The overlords responded with fury. They ramped up their assaults, sending more shadow assassins to hunt down the Creeper. But this only made things worse. The more they tried to crush it, the more elusive it became. With each failure, the overlords' grip on Earth began to slip. Even as hope grew, fear lingered. The Creeper's methods were brutal, ruthless. It didn't just kill the shadow assassins, it dismantled them, breaking them down in ways that unsettled even the resistance fighters who revered it. Some began to wonder if the Creeper was as much a danger to humanity as it was to the aliens. The war had changed. What began as a straightforward invasion had turned into a game of shadows, with the Creeper at its center. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival anymore, they were fighting to reclaim their world. But as the lines between hero and monster blurred, the question remained: what would be left of humanity when the Creeper was done? Desperate to regain control, the overlords initiated more extreme measures. They unleashed new technologies, trying to corner and capture this mysterious enemy. But the Creeper adapted just as quickly, staying one step ahead, striking where the aliens least expected. It had become more than just a resistance, it was now a force of nature, a living symbol of humanity's refusal to surrender. The more the overlords studied the creeper, the more they realized they couldn't understand it. It wasn't just a weapon, it was an idea, born out of humanity's darkest hour. Years before the invasion, secret experiments had been conducted by a small group of researchers who feared Earth's next great war wouldn't be between nations, but between worlds. They knew conventional warfare would be useless against a superior enemy, so they sought something different, something that could strike at the heart of any invader. This wasn't about brute force, it was about breaking the enemy's mind. They had studied ancient human history, learning how fear could control entire populations and how the unseen could be more terrifying than the strongest armies. From this, they developed the foundation for what would become the creeper. It wasn't a soldier, not in the traditional sense. It didn't carry guns or bombs. It used darkness, the unknown, and primal terror all beings feel when they sense something is hunting them. When the invasion began and the shadow assassins unleashed their silent terror, Earth's remaining leadership knew they had to act. They activated the program, releasing the creeper into the world. It wasn't a person, nor was it a machine. It was an amalgamation of the best and worst parts of humanity: our fear, our cunning, our ability to survive by any means necessary. The creeper was designed to mirror the shadow assassins' tactics, but take them further to become something even the overlords would fear. The first deployment of the creeper was met with skepticism. Even those who knew of its existence weren't sure it would work. It wasn't a single entity that could be easily tracked or controlled. It operated on its own, blending into the shadows, becoming part of the environment. It didn't fight in a traditional sense, and that's what made it powerful. It understood that the mind was the real battlefield. When the creeper first struck, no one knew what had happened. A team of shadow assassins had been sent to eliminate the last of Earth's major resistance forces, but they never returned. Days later, their bodies were found, completely dismantled, not just killed, but utterly destroyed, their technology rendered useless, their advanced weaponry torn apart. It wasn't a clean kill, it was a message. The overlords were enraged. They couldn't comprehend how a species they had nearly eradicated could fight back. The shadow assassins were supposed to be invincible, their technology far beyond anything humans had ever seen. But now, something was hunting them, and the overlords didn't know what it was. Reports flooded in from across the globe. Wherever the shadow assassins went, the creeper followed. It seemed to know their every move, slipping past their defenses, striking when they least expected. It wasn't a direct confrontation. The creeper didn't need to face them head-on. It used their fear against them, turning their greatest strength into a crippling weakness. The assassins were methodical, cold, and calculated. But the creeper exploited the one thing they couldn't control: their instinct for survival. No matter how advanced or perfectly trained they were, the assassins were still living beings with a will to live. The creeper played on that fear, using psychological warfare to push them to the brink. In one particularly brutal attack, a high-ranking alien commander was found dead, his body twisted and contorted, surrounded by his elite guard, who had also been killed in grotesque ways. It wasn't just about the kill. The creeper wanted them to understand that they weren't safe, not even in their most secure fortresses. No matter where they hid, no matter how much technology surrounded them, the creeper could reach them. Panic began to seep into the alien forces. The shadow assassins, once feared as perfect killing machines, began to falter. They started making mistakes. They hesitated before entering dark rooms, checked behind them more frequently than before, and their flawless coordination began to crumble as paranoia crept in. The overlords tried to tighten their control, sending more resources to hunt down this new threat, but the creeper was always one step ahead. Humanity, watching from the shadows, began to take heart. Resistance groups started to reform, inspired by the stories of the creeper. They learned to mimic its tactics, using the environment to their advantage and striking from the dark. They didn't have the creeper's abilities, but they didn't need them. All they needed was to believe they could fight back. That belief spread like wildfire. The overlords were enraged. They had expected total domination, but now they were being outmaneuvered by a force they couldn't even see. They deployed new technologies, advanced scanners, tracking devices designed to locate the creeper, but it was useless. The creeper couldn't be tracked. It left no trail. It was a living nightmare, always just beyond their reach. As the war shifted in humanity's favor, the creeper's reputation grew. It was no longer just a weapon, it had become a legend. Stories spread among the resistance fighters, tales of how the creeper could walk through walls, become invisible, and was invincible. The truth no longer mattered. What mattered was that the overlords were losing their grip on Earth. But even as hope blossomed, the creeper remained an enigma. No one knew what it truly was. Was it human? Was it something else entirely? Some began to wonder if the creeper was as much a threat to humanity as it was to the aliens. Its methods were brutal and merciless. It didn't just kill, it obliterated, dismantling its enemies in ways that sent a clear message there was no safety. Some in the resistance started to fear the creeper. They questioned whether humanity could truly reclaim their world if victory came at such a high moral cost. Could they ever return to what they were before the invasion? The creeper's tactics were necessary, but they came with consequences. The line between humanity and its alien enemies was beginning to blur. Was the creeper still human, or had it become something beyond them? Despite these concerns, the creeper's role in the war couldn't be denied. The overlord's empire was beginning to fall apart. For every new piece of technology they deployed to fight the creeper, another part of their control over Earth slipped away. Their resources were spread too thin, their assassins too few, and their morale too shattered to hold onto the planet much longer. The overlords became increasingly desperate. They tried to bring reinforcements from their other conquered worlds, but those forces were delayed, bogged down by logistical issues and the growing fear that had spread through the alien hierarchy. No one wanted to face the creeper. It had become a symbol of inevitable death, an entity that even the most advanced technology couldn't defeat. Trapped on a world they no longer controlled, the overlords were isolated. In one final, desperate act, they escalated their attacks on human cities, hoping to flush out the creeper by threatening the lives of the remaining human population. They bombed civilian areas indiscriminately, hoping to force humanity into submission through sheer terror. But this only fueled the resistance further. The more brutal the overlords became, the more determined humanity grew to see them destroyed. The creeper responded in kind. It grew even more aggressive, launching a series of coordinated strikes against the overlord's strongholds. Each time they thought they had trapped the creeper, it slipped through their grasp, attacking from an unexpected angle. The overlords were running out of time and options. They had entered this war thinking they would dominate effortlessly, but now they were losing to an enemy they didn't understand. As the conflict reached its boiling point, the creeper remained in the shadows, a constant reminder that no matter how powerful the invaders thought they were, they could never truly conquer the human spirit. Fear, once a weapon used against Earth, had been turned on its creators. The overlords, for all their might, were learning that even the strongest armies could be brought down by the darkness they themselves had unleashed. Now desperate, the overlords realized they had underestimated humanity's ability to resist. More importantly, they had underestimated the creeper. Every measure they had taken to counter it had failed. Their technological superiority, which they had relied on for centuries, had been rendered useless by a foe that didn't play by their rules. They were beginning to understand that fear, this primal, uncontrollable emotion, was their undoing. In a final attempt to regain control, the overlords unleashed their most dangerous weapons. These were tools they had held back, saving for a situation they never thought would arise. These weren't just weapons of mass destruction, they were designed to break the will of any enemy. Entire cities were razed overnight, not for strategic advantage, but as a show of force. The message was clear: the creeper might be winning the battles, but humanity would pay the price in blood. But the creeper did not respond to threats. Neither did humanity. Every act of brutality only strengthened the resolve of those still fighting. Survivors of the massacres didn't crumble in fear, they fought back harder. The creeper, still lurking in the shadows, struck more viciously than ever. It no longer targeted just the shadow assassins, it now went after the overlords themselves. High-ranking alien commanders, once untouchable, suddenly found themselves within the creeper's reach. The overlords' leadership began to unravel. Their once organized hierarchy descended into chaos as fear spread among their ranks. They could no longer trust that their defenses would hold, that their technology would protect them. Paranoia crept into every decision they made. In their panic, the overlords began to tear themselves apart. Some factions within their ranks called for retreat, recognizing that they were losing control. Others, more prideful and desperate, pushed for greater escalation, one that could destroy not only the creeper but all of humanity in a single, decisive blow. But this division only played into the creeper's hands. It capitalized on the growing infighting among the alien forces. exploiting the cracks that were widening in their once unshakable command structure. As the alien forces splintered, the Creeper pressed its advantage. It wasn't just about killing key figures anymore. The Creeper began systematically dismantling their communication networks, cutting off their ability to coordinate attacks or call for reinforcements. The overlords, who once controlled every inch of the planet with precision, were now blind. They had no way of knowing where the next attack would come from or how to defend against it. Humanity, watching from the fringes, took note of the overlords' disarray. The resistance fighters saw their chance. With the overlords divided and weakened, they began organizing larger offensives. This was no longer just about survival, it was about reclaiming their world. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity was on the offensive, and the overlords could do little to stop it. The Creeper's attacks grew bolder. It infiltrated the heart of the overlords' remaining fortresses, taking down not just soldiers but their very infrastructure. Advanced power systems were sabotaged, weapons caches destroyed, and critical supply lines cut off. The Creeper had shifted the balance of the war entirely. The overlords, once seen as invincible, were now the ones being hunted. Every attempt to flush out the Creeper ended in catastrophic failure. Their traps failed, their countermeasures backfired, and their most loyal assassins were no match for the growing legend of the Creeper. By now, the Creeper was no longer just a weapon of war, it had become a symbol, an embodiment of Earth's vengeance. The remaining overlords were terrified. They had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest, but now they were trapped on a world they couldn't control, haunted by a nightmare they had unleashed. They were no longer the hunters, they had become the prey. As their situation became increasingly desperate, the overlords made one final, desperate push. They unleashed their most advanced weaponry tools capable of leveling entire cities in seconds and wiping out entire populations. This was their last resort, a final gamble that, if successful, would leave nothing behind. But the Creeper had anticipated this move. Before the overlords could execute their plan, the Creeper struck in a series of coordinated attacks, sabotaging their key weapon systems and rendering their final hope of victory useless. The overlords had lost. Their armies were in disarray, their assassins were dead or too frightened to act, and their leadership had fractured beyond repair. The Creeper had not only broken their physical defenses, but it had also shattered their spirit. The overlords had underestimated humanity, and in doing so, they had doomed themselves. Faced with the reality of their defeat, the overlords had no choice but to retreat. What few forces they had left were evacuated, and their ships, once symbols of fear and domination, fled into the skies, abandoning Earth to the Creeper and its people. Humanity had won, not through brute force or superior technology, but by turning the overlord's own weapon against them: fear. The battle for Earth was over, but the cost had been staggering. Cities lay in ruins, vast stretches of land were uninhabitable, and the survivors were few. The Creeper had done what no army could. It had broken the overlords and ensured that humanity would never again be so easily conquered. But now, as the world began to recover, the question of the Creeper's future loomed large. It had served its purpose, but its methods had been brutal, unforgiving. Would the Creeper now fade into history, or would it continue to shape the new world emerging from the ashes of war? For now, the answer didn't matter. Earth had survived, and the Creeper had ensured that it would never be threatened in the same way again. The overlords had been sent running, their armies decimated, their pride shattered. In the end, it was humanity, adaptable, relentless, and unbreakable, that had sent them fleeing into the stars. The Creeper was both humanity's savior and a reminder of the lengths they were willing to go to survive. With the overlords gone and their forces in retreat, an eerie silence fell over the world. The once mighty alien ships had fled, their shadow assassins either destroyed or in hiding. The skies, once filled with their imposing presence, were now empty. Humanity had won, but the price of victory was clear. Cities lay in ruins, vast stretches of the planet were uninhabitable, and the survivors were few. As they began to emerge from the rubble and desolation, people struggled to make sense of the new world they now inhabited. The Creeper, the mysterious force that had turned the tide of the war, had vanished as swiftly as it had appeared. It had fulfilled its purpose, striking fear into the hearts of the invaders and dismantling their empire from within. But no one knew what had become of it. There were whispers, of course, rumors that it had returned to the shadows, watching and waiting, ensuring that no other force would ever again threaten Earth. Others believed that the Creeper had been a manifestation of humanity's darkest instincts, a reflection of what people were capable of when pushed to the brink of extinction. For the survivors, the real challenge had only just begun. Rebuilding the world wasn't just about clearing the debris or restoring the infrastructure. The psychological scars ran deeper than the physical damage. The war had reshaped humanity in ways that could never be undone. People had witnessed the collapse of everything they knew, and in its place they had seen the rise of something far more primal. The Creeper had shown them that survival required a willingness to embrace the darkness within, to fight with everything, no matter the cost. But that same darkness now lingered. The Creeper had been a weapon of necessity, a savior in humanity's darkest hour, but for many, it had also become a symbol of fear. There was a growing unease among the survivors. What would happen if the Creeper turned its gaze back on them? Could they trust that it would remain dormant, or had they unleashed something that could never be fully controlled? These questions haunted those who had lived through the war. The resistance fighters, once unified by a common enemy, now faced a different kind of division. Some saw the Creeper as a hero, a necessary force that had done what no army could. They believed it had saved humanity, and whatever methods it had used were justified. Others, however, viewed it with suspicion, fearing that the Creeper's ruthlessness reflected a darker future. The line between humanity and its enemies had blurred, and now, with no invaders left to fight, that line was becoming harder to define. Amidst the rebuilding efforts, debates raged on about the future of Earth's defense. Some called for the development of new technologies to prevent another invasion, advocating for greater control and vigilance. They saw the Creeper as a last resort, something that should never be relied upon again. Others argued that the Creeper represented the ultimate defense, a reminder that Earth could fight back in ways no one had anticipated, and that this advantage should be nurtured and cultivated. But the Creeper's true nature remained a mystery. There were no records of its origins, no official reports detailing who or what it truly was. Those closest to the resistance leadership knew of the secret experiments, the psychological warfare tactics that had been developed long before the invasion, but even they couldn't fully explain how the Creeper had evolved into the force that had ultimately driven the overlords from Earth. The question of control loomed large. Had humanity created the Creeper, or had the Creeper created itself from the fear and desperation of a planet on the brink of destruction? In the aftermath of the war, this question became the focal point of intense speculation. Some believed the Creeper was still among them, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the moment it would be needed again. Others hoped it had disappeared for good, a relic of a time when survival demanded the most extreme measures. For now, though, the world turned its attention to rebuilding. Nations once decimated by the invasion slowly began to reestablish themselves. Governments were reformed, though many with different ideologies than before. The old ways of thinking about power, control, and governance had been shattered by the war. In their place emerged a new understanding of what it meant to survive and to fight for the future. It was no longer about domination or strength, it was about adaptability, resilience, and the willingness to face the unknown. The Creeper had embodied all of those things. It had adapted, evolved, and turned the overlord's own tactics against them. But in doing so, it had forced humanity to confront its own capacity for darkness. Victory had come at a cost not just in lives, but in the way humanity now viewed itself. The Creeper had shown that they were capable of anything when faced with extinction, but it had also left them questioning what that meant for their future. As the world slowly healed, the legend of the Creeper became part of the new global narrative. Stories of its deeds, its victories, and its mysterious disappearances spread across the planet. For some, it was a tale of triumph, a reminder of humanity's strength in the face of impossible odds. For others, it was a cautionary story about the dangers of using fear and darkness as weapons. Yet despite all the uncertainty, one thing was clear: the Creeper had changed the world forever. The overlords had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest, but they had left defeated, broken by a force they could never have anticipated. And while the overlord's empire had crumbled, the Creeper's shadow remained a silent guardian, or perhaps a silent threat, watching over a world that was now rebuilding from the ashes. For now, the Creeper had vanished, but whether it was waiting for the next threat or simply fading into myth, no one could say for certain. It had been Earth's last, greatest weapon, and it had proven that humanity, no matter the odds, would always find a way to survive.